Now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Stephan Liozu. Stephan Liozu is Chief Value Officer of the Thales Group and Chief Marketing Officer of Thales Inc. in the USA. He holds a PhD in management from Case Western University, and over the past few years, Stephan published many academic articles and written several articles on strategic pricing issues. He authored 3 books and co-authored another 3. Stephan sits on the advisory board of LeveragePoint Innovations and of the Professional Pricing Society. So with that, Stephan, welcome.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon in Europe and good night somewhere else. Happy to be with you today to discuss the topic of dollarization within the construct of value-based pricing. So, as you can see on the title here, I really make a statement when I propose that dollarization is the heart of value-based pricing. And when you make that statement, I think you have to go and step back a little bit and looking at what is value-based pricing really, because we're still facing the issue of multiple definitions and multiple conceptualization of what value-based pricing really is. You know, whether you think value-based pricing is 3 steps, 4 steps, 10 steps, it's a methodology or the strategy or an orientation, it doesn't change the fact that you have to dollarize. And that's the topic of today's webinar, is on, you know, how do you do the dollarization, what it means, and to give you some best practices on how to do that. So as a matter of introduction, as you know, I like to keep things very simple, and when you focus on price setting, there are really 3 C's that you have to take into considerations. The biggest one and the most complicated one is the customer, the customer value, you know, everything that has to do with the understanding on how much value you create for your customers, whether it's B2B, B2C, or B2G to the government. It is the pillar, I would say, of value-based orientation, but yet, you know, the one that's most commonly neglected, you know, in comparison to the other 2 C's, costs and competition. And if you remember some of the papers I've been writing over the past 6-7 years, there are still a vast majority of companies doing pricing based on competition. Almost half of companies, as a matter of fact, about 30 to 35% of companies doing cost-based pricing, and then the rest doing customer value-based pricing. So it's a way of you know, keeping it very simple, but also resonates a lot with practitioners in organization when you ask them very simply to rebalance the way they set the price and make sure that they pay equal attention to customer value versus competition and cost. So they're not mutually exclusive. You will need the 3 C's to make sound pricing decisions, but at some point, you know, you have to be serious about focusing on customer value, and that includes dollarization. So for each of the C, you have a series of pricing strategies, which most of you know already, just to bring everybody on the same page. And you know, just to list a few, if you do cost plus, you probably will do target return on sales, target profit-based pricing, contribution margin-based pricing, and the traditional cost plus, which is a markup on top of your cost. Very internally focused, very simple, very straightforward. Competition-based pricing will be mostly market-based pricing, penetration pricing, and then following what competition is doing, plus or minus with a premium based on the differential you want to keep versus your competition. And then more tricky is customer value-based pricing strategies, focusing on willingness to pay, the performance of your solutions, product or services, and then all these management of perceptions, and what is perceived value and how do you translate that into your price level. So just a little bit of a repetition or refresher for people. The 3 C's are still valid. Some consultants have proposed 2 or 3 more C's. It's great. The more the merrier, but I like to keep things very simple in organization. It's a KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid, and so that people remember it. And when you go into making pricing decisions for products, for bids, or for large contracts, it's always goes down to the 3 C's and the balancing of the 3 C's in the decision. So, what is value-based pricing? Here's a definition that I really like. It's a pricing strategy and orientation or a practice that sets price primarily, but not exclusively, on the value perceived or estimated, rather than just the cost of the product or transactional historical prices. And then it's obviously, when successfully done, it improves profitability and allows you to increase your pricing power without losing, theoretically, sales volume or quantity. So the value-based pricing is definitely a difficult pricing orientation or pricing approach, requiring a lot of different activities and a different mindset in organization. And there's also a series of steps that you have to take, which we'll go into in the next slides. So straight out of the book, and by the way, all these slides and visuals are available in the book, but in my experience in teaching and deploying and consulting and coaching in my former life on value-based pricing, I found that there are some prerequisites to being very successful in deploying this approach. And obviously, it starts with having a marketing team in place and having a marketing that's much more than communications. A marketing team that knows how to do segmentation, understand the concepts of positioning and versus competition, is able to map competition versus our offering, understand value messaging, value communication, branding, and typically a company wanting to start on value-based pricing without a marketing team is difficult to do. You're missing some of the foundations required to be successful. Equally, you do need to have some foundation in pricing and understand the price setting, the price getting mechanisms. It doesn't have to be very advanced, but at least doing something on pricing is definitely helpful with value-based pricing. The other two are quite unusual, I would say, and I found that typically, if you want to embark on value orientation and value transformation, you really have to have a strong foundation of performance and execution. And too many times I see companies that want to do this transformation at the same time as fixing their issues, late delivery, quality issues, not very easy to do business with. And then it is difficult to build, the subject of differentiation and dollarizing differentiation value, what makes you unique, if already what you do, the must-haves, are not very solid. So one of the foundations of being, for example, value-driven or value-differentiated is to be strong in what you do, very strong on execution and delivering excellent quality and service performance. So then it has to have a burning platform and make value a corporate strategic priority, whether you call it value marketing or customer orientation. There needs to be some type of value in the process. And obviously, you have to have budgets and resources and talent patience, because as you know, and I've written many pieces on the topic, that going on value-based pricing is a transformation, it's a journey, and it's not going to happen in 3 months. It takes time and effort and resilience. So those are the prerequisites that are usually discussed with my partners, clients, former clients, and in Thales today, to make sure that we are sure that we want to maximize our chance of success to be deploying value-based pricing the right way. So the 6 steps of value-based pricing are listed here. Some other consulting companies have described 4 steps, up all the way to 10 steps. This is based on the great work from Andreas Hinterhuber and the Monitor Group, and I've listed these 6 steps. In the book, there is a chapter per step to really go down and help in a practical manner how leaders and practitioners can deploy and do, for example, great competitive analysis for value-based pricing, do excellent user need segmentation and not traditional thermographics or demographic segmentation. Then once you've done that, identifying your true differentiation. What is true versus must-have versus nice to have? What is obvious versus hidden differentiation? So there is a chapter on what differentiation is all about. And once you know that, then you can get into the process of dollarizing the differentiation against specific competitors for specific customer segments. And here is a trick. And lots of companies think they can do value propositions and do them for everybody. And if you really look at segmentation and what user need segmentation does is really separating customers into clusters of behaviors of needs. And you quickly realize that these one-size-fits-all value proposition or value models, even if they're dollarized, do not apply well because you have different categories of customers. So you need to do segmentation. And then you need to dollarize for each segment and extract the true differentiation. So one of the steps that I added here is really the estimation of the value pool to share with customers, prospects, or the market. And that's essential. I think that that concept of value pool, which means understanding truly the net differentiation value for a product, a service, a bundle, a solution, or a corporate relationship, is essential before you can decide on how you're going to share that value. So if the message is I can create $1 million of value for a customer, then how much do I keep and how much do I give away to various customers? And that will be changing by segments. So this is a step that it's very difficult, and then usually there is a lot of discussion on how that value is distributed. And I propose a series of mechanisms and actually a tool that you could use to decide on how to share to make it a little bit more rational and less emotional. And then the last step is pricing accordingly in the value pool to capture value, right? So as you can see, lots of homework to be done before you actually set the price. Lots of understanding competition, lots of deriving the right segmentation from your transactional data, from your customer data, from your quantitative market data, from your qualitative segmentation to be able to find these customer groups and then go down the process of identifying differentiation, quantifying it, and then eventually set the price. Easy to say on the screen with a 6-step, very difficult in essence to implement and operationalize. And I would say that most of the time we would skip through the steps, or we will do, for example, if you don't do segmentation, you could still do the rest of the step, but you will find that your value models, your dollarized value proposition are not resonating with customers because customers have different needs. The same if you don't pick the right competitor and maybe you forget your indirect competition, right? If you sell a software and there is no software in place, or you have to understand the current process in the customer location. So you have to blueprint the process, and the as-is process becomes competition. So lots of little nuances and tips that needs to be taken into account when doing the designing and the deployment of these 6 steps. So the logic at the end is to be able to compare ourselves versus competition and to justify our premium, not based on a random, we're going to be 5% more than competition, but based on the differentiation value that we bring to the accounts, to the customers. So the premium then justification, it is based on the steps that we reviewed before. You're going to look at your true differentiation. You're going to dollarize it to translate them in dollars and cents, or euros and cents, or yens, and you're going to justify, elaborate value proposition and value messages to justify your premium by projecting the differentiation value, your true value drivers. And this differentiation might come from different situations, from services, from products, from bundles, from the ease of doing business with, the experience, you name it. Sometimes your products could be more commoditized, and then the differentiation will come from the integration of the product with the service and the software, or the spare part and the maintenance of the service that you're going to offer over the duration of the product life. So, and that's a complication. Deploying value-based pricing in a division or in an entire corporation puts you in front of various scenarios. You're going to have to dollarize right and left all kinds of different situations. So what is dollarization at the end? Dollarization is defined as a translation of the benefits that an offering, product, service, software bundle, delivers to a customer into the actual dollars and cents impact to that customer versus what's in place, an incumbent or do nothing or as is. So obviously dollarization is all about dollars, and we could transfer that into yen, euros, or Mexican pesos. But at the end, the name dollarization exists in the vocabulary. Our first book was published in 2005, The Discipline of Dollarization by Jeff Fox, and I think it was time from my perspective to create a second book to refresh this concept and make it even more tangible and concrete for practitioners who want to do value-based pricing and dollarize. So it is about looking at identifying actual benefits, financial benefits of a product or service for a specific customer in a specific segment versus specific competitors. And the key word here is specific. And when you do value-based pricing in a division where you have 1,000 SKUs, maybe 20 competitors, 6 regions, and 1,000 account managers, imagine the number of dollarized value models or propositions you're going to have to do. Imagine the number of versions you're going to have to keep. And that is where you need to use technology to help you. And technology, like the value-based pricing software LeveragePoint offers, is a way to accelerate the deployment of that dollarization mechanism. Because we have to become more granular at the product level, at the bundle level, at the service level, and extract the true differentiation and dollarize it so that we understand truly the value pool. One key note here is the difference between dollarization and monetization. Two different concepts. And I, as a former professor, I like to be using the concepts the right way. So I gave you the dollarization definition, right? Translation of benefits that a product or service delivers to a customer. Monetization is something different. Monetization is to convert an asset into a revenue stream, which could be based on cost, which could be based on all kinds of different considerations, which could be free and maybe leading to other revenue streams through ads or through a different way of through clicks. But a lot of time I see confusion between what's dollarization and what's monetization. All right, so I want to establish the base here that monetization is very important because you have to translate innovations or new business models or new software or utilities into a stream of revenue. But then I go a step further, is that stream of revenue versus the as is needs to be based on value you create and not on cost or competition. So in essence, what do you dollarize? And that's a trick question. How do you start the process of doing value-based pricing? Obviously, you have to know your competition. You have to do a great segmentation, and those already are two heavy-duty constructs in the marketing, discipline. Once you get to identifying your differentiation, it gets tricky. So you have to understand what exactly you're going to start with. And I usually recommend to start with products or services that are well scoped out or well identified so that you could get better at practicing your value modeling and dollarization, and then eventually move into the spectrum of complexity and start looking at maybe a software, maybe bundles that you want to dollarize, and then eventually you go into integrated system. And it's something that's we're working very hard right now in the Thales Group at looking at the value of integration, because our business models are moving more and more towards solutions and less towards product and individual services, and more giving the customer segments that are willing to pay for a full integrated solution or turnkey solution a dollarized offering, and explicitly tell them this is what we're doing for you. So you have to be crystal clear on what you're doing for customers. At the end, though, you could argue that you could dollarize an entire relationship. So, and that's what typically strategic account managers would do. They would use value scorecard and enter into the identifying of exactly what goes in the relationship, what products come in, what service comes in, what corporate services are included, and looking at the value of the relationship, the differentiation value of the relationship. And the SAMs and the global account managers are typically very well positioned to do this, and they have the great business acumen. So, but that's not what you start with. You don't go straight into doing complex solution and dollarizing of a relationship. You start slowly but surely and improve the level of competency. And because at the end of the day, you need to manage that complexity, you need to exactly know what you're doing, and you need data. And one of the key success factors of dollarization is to get the value data and just, bring to the table the people and the source of data that will allow you to make the calculations. Because it is a translation of benefits into dollars and cents and through a financial formula. And the formula is fed by data. So another key success factor of dollarization is you cannot do dollarization, the activity of dollarization, in a vacuum. And you have to establish an integration mechanism into existing processes. And usually it looks like, okay, your organization might already do value propositions. Whether you're using the Alex Osterwalder value proposition canvas or traditional value proposition activities, you're starting. It's excellent to start because you start paying attention to customer needs, the customer pains, the profiles of the customers, etc., etc. At some point, though, you need to turn that from absolute value to relative value, and that is including value proposition that your competitors offer. And then you compare these various value propositions, you versus other competitors for specific customer profile. And then that comparison becomes a value model. You dollarize one versus the other. What are we doing better than competition, right, in specific segment? So it's important, it's extremely important not to go from straight doing value proposition, all the way to pricing, because what's missing there is the dollarization step. The comparison with competition. And if it's the case, then you would most likely do cost-based pricing or competition-based pricing. And then the outcome of this needs to be in something that will be included in the existing either gate process for innovation, new product development, or the bid process, or a commercial process that will include the result of your dollarized value models and your value proposition. And, so how do you connect all these and make it very concrete for the sales force on how to use the outcome of the dollarization is critical. Otherwise, you just do dollarization. It'll be in a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. It'll be in a beautiful spreadsheet on someone's computer, and nothing happens. This is why the LeveragePoint platform is fully integrated in the sales process. And that sales process could actually be embedded in Salesforce, in opportunity management, in bid management, in customer profiles, the account plans, right? Your strategic commercial processes. One of the challenges of dollarization is when you get into that situation where your company is very close to the end users, the consumers. So you're what's called a B2B2C company, where you have to manage distributors or dealers or someone who's going to transform your products and then sell that to a consumer. On one side, you have the B2B relationship. On the other side, you have the B2C relationship. And that requires you to pretty much be a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and have two types of dollarization mechanism. And on one side, you have a more rational, fact-driven professional buyer who will be very interested, maybe if it's not a price buyer, in the total cost of ownership, the lifetime value of the relationship, and value scores, etc. And on the other side, you have to have consumers, maybe consumers who will buy a product based more on emotion, on perceptions, where they're going to be very interested in receiving stories. And these type of products are, for example, tires or things that you touch, like a washing machine, or so there's a lot of emotion, and more marketing now is geared at building more experience and emotions. So if you're in that case where you have a B2B, B2C environment, then you will have to do two sets of value propositions. You will have to look at your dollarization methodology and make sure you dollarize, but on one side, you might use a dollar and cent stories. On the other side, you may not have to use it because the story is actually much more important than the dollar numbers. And this is kind of the trick here is that you have to do twice the work, and the fact that you have to have storytellers, people in your marketing communications team or in your whoever you use, your agencies, that can create true stories. And then it'll become a decision based on what the consumer might be willing to accept. Sometimes a more dramatic story is better than giving them numbers because you created a much better emotional connection with the consumer. And if you remember the Harry McDavid and Mike Wilkinson value triad, you do three things for the customer. You save money, you make money, or you create an emotional connection. And in that situation here, you have to do both. You have to show the buyer how much money you're going to make him and how much money you're going to save him. But then you have to create a strong emotional connection with the end user, the consumer. So something to keep in mind if you're in that situation. So usually you start your dollarization process not by going straight into the heavy-duty numbers and calculation. And this is something that I find very fascinating when I do dollarization workshops, and I do a lot of them now in Thales. And engineers like to do calculations. They go straight into the calculations. And I think there is a sequence that I like to use, and it starts with translating the differentiation into customer benefits. You really have to put yourself in the shoes of your customers, and hopefully that you've done a customer journey analysis. But then you have to use your customer vocabulary, their thinking process, their mental frames, and understanding their unit of measure, understanding their pressure, and how they think about your product and your solution. And that requires a different approach to thinking about the customer. So you're not pushing technology or products, you're thinking of what actually the customer is getting and what, in their mind, the benefit they think they're getting. That's what you start with. Then you have to prioritize these customer benefits based on the segment. Customer benefit might be very compelling for one segment and not compelling for the other. Safety might be important for maybe a category of drivers and not for the others. So the prioritization is important, and it's linked to your segmentation, right? You want to create a hook, create a compelling hook, and that's why most of the time, and I tell you, I got a lot of things wrong when I started, even myself, learning about dollarization. Sometimes you may think you want to start with a big bang, I'm going to save you $1 million a year, where maybe the first thing you say is an emotional benefit, and then you support that with a dollarized, driver. So the prioritization is important. Number three, then you have to turn these benefits into compelling facts and ratios. And that's something that I introduced after my experience in doing lots of dollarization workshops is don't go straight to the number, but look at, can you translate that into 30% more effective, 20% faster, 1/3 more savings, 10% reduction of this. So between the benefit and the dollar, there is a ratio or a fact that also sometimes is compelling. Because if you give 3 products, if you buy, for example, you say to a customer, a B2B customer, every time you buy 4 products, 1 is free, in essence, because I'm saving you so much money. So this is a type of ratio, in fact, that are very important, because sometimes they're a much more dramatic story than the dollar saving itself. So I force my, I would say, quote unquote, force my my subject in dollarization workshop to find these nuggets of fact and ratio. Then number 4, you dollarize in dollars, euros, and cents, and then you find the actual, savings that you offer. And obviously there is a little bit of storytelling there. You're not going to say, I'm going to save you $994.72. You're going to round up to $1,000. You're going to create a story that every time you buy 3 products, I'm saving, I'm allowing to go on the weekend, on the retreat somewhere on the weekend and save $500. So this is more of a storytelling that you're going to have to create. And that's a step number 5. So you see, it's not as easy as these things. Yes, you're going to go into the mechanics of dollarization and actually creating the formula, finding the data, do the calculations, and you could do that obviously in Excel or on a piece of paper, or in the LeveragePoint software if you desire to do so. But there is a sequence, and you cannot go too quickly over the 1, 2, and 3 and go straight into dollarization. So you all have seen a value model. This is how it looks like. This is what the outcome of dollarization is all about. And obviously, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we've done multiple webinars with LeveragePoint. There's more information online, but it's all about finding the value pool, the net differentiation value between positive and negative, comparing against the reference value. So this is still valid today, still a great tool to be used. And I usually use that as a outcome of dollarization workshop, so that you break it into chunks of positive and negative differentiation value here. An example quickly is the bounty value model. So go to a store and looking at the price of bounty, twice more absorbent, but so the generic brand price is $4.99, twice more absorbent, it's twice the price, less quantity per pack. You see the total net differentiation value, the value pool is big, between $4.99 and $9.29, and they set the price very high. But what's important here is that sometimes one value driver makes the case. And that's something that I see, one of these tendencies that we have is we try to tell the consumer, the customers, too many things. Simple is better. And in that case, twice more absorbent, twice the price, it's a great dramatic story. And you price higher in the value pool. This was an example of a flooring product done in my old times. It's obviously anonymized and the numbers are not real, but here we have 4 value drivers and one of the biggest one is the savings in labor preparation of the floor. This is a revolutionary product for flooring. Well, you actually do not have to prepare the floor. You can go straight on top of the residues that you have on the floor. But you can see the savings are tremendous versus competition, which, by the way, there's a boo-boo here. It's $1.12 per square foot. So in your dollarization and your value story, you would start with the biggest savings possible, the savings in labor in the floor preparation, and that's 54 cents. That's almost half of the cost of competition. If you decide to continue, then you can add 1 or 2 more drivers, but sometimes it's better to say less. Internally, though, in your analysis, you need to go through the process and extract all these differentiation levels and values. What you show to the end user is something different. So there cannot be any confusion between the fact that you need to dollarize and have the discipline of dollarization of all your value drivers, but then what you show in the end might be different, because not everyone is willing to receive 3 or 4 numbers or interested in numbers. Another example of a tire, energy saver tire, where by being much more efficient on the geometry of the tire, you could save $100 over the lifetime of a tire, and you could see the additional wear resistance. So here you have 2 value drivers, net differentiation value 138, and then obviously, the tire being a very competitive industry and very price-driven, you might be able to price a little bit higher versus, versus Bridgestone, but I do not think that you might be able to capture twice the price of Bridgestone for a series of maybe competitive dynamics and what's happening in the market in the mental frame of reference of the consumer. So the point here, again, you have to dollarize, and then how you price in the value pool, that 138, this is what we want to get to. Once you know the value pool, then you're in much better control of your pricing decision. So why do you dollarize in the end? Well, I propose 5 reasons. One is rebalance the 3 C's of price setting. I mentioned that before. We need to rebalance those. It's not one or the other. It's using the 3 and make sure customer value is well represented at the table of the pricing decision. Number 2 is to know exactly how much value you create. And this is a discipline. The more you dollarize, the more you understand the value pool, the more you know exactly what is created for the customer. And remember, you cannot capture something that you don't measure. You create the value, you dollarize it, and then you capture it. So you're in much better control over your value sharing process. So doing all this exercise doesn't mean that you're going to always go out with try to capture 90% of the value pool. Sometimes you may have to give everything away just to get a customer or a buyer to change, technology, to try your technology, right? They have to have an incentive to do so. But at least you're in control and you can explain why you give it 90% away to the customer. Most of companies will do 50-50. And that's not acceptable in an age of data and big science. We want to be in control, and it helps you execute your pricing tactics. Know exactly what discounts you're going to give, and maybe minimize your discount rate. Maybe minimize the number of deviations you're going to give versus what's agreed upon in the contract. And then finally, being able to create innovation, new pricing models for your markets. So there's more benefits, but I see these as the big 5 benefits of dollarization. And then one of the examples that I always show is all these companies that are under severe commoditization pressure, Hilti and Michelin and Microsoft and SKF, and what they did is move their pricing models from a traditional transactional pricing model to a new way of doing pricing, usage-based pricing, performance-based pricing, price per miles, price per landing, monthly subscription. So by knowing exactly the value pool and knowing that, yes, I have differentiation and I create a lot of value, it gives you maybe an opportunity to try different things in pricing models and change the game. Because your competition is always good at putting you in the commoditization buckets. So by changing the game in the pricing model, you kind of change the way the buyers and consumers think about your product, and you're creating a new experience in general. So at the end of the game, it's all about looking at value management as a process. And lots of companies do excellent work in value creation. And for the last 10, 20 years, academia and all these associations, whether it's marketing associations or strategic account management associations, have been focusing a lot on creation. And what I'm trying to tell them is creation is great, awesome. But then you have to know how much that creation is worth. And that's why you do dollarization or quantification of value. And it's hard work, and it requires discipline, and it requires the assembly or the combination of analytical skills, scientific skills, and then the art of it, the storytelling, the understanding of the vocabulary of the consumer, the creation of the intimacy with the customers. And that's in the dollarization sphere. And then you capture, right? You create pricing models for value, and then you become better at executing your pricing strategy. It's a sequence, and you've heard me say that before. But you cannot skip over or forget the dollarization piece, as Peter Drucker mentioned. If you know Peter Drucker, the management guru, what gets measured gets managed. And the more you do dollarization, the more you're going to manage your value process, and that's essential. So that's a story I have for you. Obviously, a lot more. Everything that I mentioned is described in details with lots of examples in the book. I encourage you to buy it, and hopefully you have a chance to win it today. And good luck with that. And I thank you and thank LeveragePoint for giving me the opportunity to present more information on differentiation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephan, for sharing those insights. And we've had a few questions come in during the webinar, and there's still time to enter your question into the panel on your screen. While you're entering, a reminder to complete the 10-second survey while exiting today's webinar to receive a copy of how to put a value tag on your product and be entered into a raffle giving away 10 copies of Dollarizing Differentiation Value by Stephan. Now to give you a couple more minutes to enter your questions, a few words on LeveragePoint. LeveragePoint's value modeling tool, as shown here, provides pricing, marketing, and product professionals a cloud-based platform to dollarize their differentiation value and produce a value proposition for sales team use. Here you'll see the summary of the value model that shows a graphical view of your model and all of its underlying data. This is a simple view for modeling what-if scenarios. When a value model is complete, it's just one click away from publishing into a value proposition. LeveragePoint sales users then can show a master value proposition early in the sales cycle, created by and editable by pricing, marketing, and product management. Whether they're selling to a VP of sales, product management or marketing, or even the C-suite, how do you want your salespeople to communicate your dollarized differentiation value? A digital, smart, interactive value proposition is the compilation of the expertise from your value-driven marketers, product managers, pricing, and sales enablement professionals. Sales reps now have a cloud-based tool that easily communicates the ROI and value that your solution provides similar customers in their industry. It clearly shows this in graphical and summary form. Located beneath the graphs and summary, there are assumptions that can be quickly modified in the meeting to align with the buyer's data. Beneath the assumptions, the overall value being delivered is broken down into specific value drivers that can be drilled down further for those buyers that are interested. Marketing collateral is provided in the tabs at the bottom, including industry case studies, videos, and white papers. LeveragePoint sales users are saying that presenting this value to the customer early, they are wasting less time with unqualified prospects, allowing their pre-sales resources to spend more time working on winning qualified opportunities. If a sales rep would like to drill down into the value drivers, they can click on the driver at the bottom of the value proposition. This takes a deeper dive into the data provided by pricing, marketing, and product teams and proves the claims being made by reps. If you're interested in learning more about LeveragePoint, please click the appropriate boxes in the exit survey, and we'll be happy to set up a time to see if the tool is right for you. All right, and moving on to Q&A. So you've got some great questions so far. And to answer the most popular one myself, yes, this webinar is recorded, and the slides and recording will be emailed to you within 2 business days. Now to moderate our Q&A, I'm pleased to introduce Peyton Marshall, LeveragePoint's chairman and CEO. Peyton.
Thanks, Taylor. And thank you, Stephan. Great job on the webinar and terrific job on the book. I really do recommend it to everyone. So first question, and it's a good first question. How do you get started? What do you do first?
Yeah, that's so obviously you have to do, if it's dollarization, you have to make sure it's within the context of value-based pricing initiatives. So whether you're started already or you're just starting your value-based pricing initiative, then it's not going to be the first thing you do. It's going to be the first 3 steps. And there's a lot of work in identifying a true differentiation. It's a lot of work. So try with a scope that's manageable, that give you the best chance of success, and then run maybe the process on a product family or an innovation, and then practice the dollarization of that innovation. Start small. Make sure you have the right teams on board, which usually is sales, marketing, innovation, finance, and maybe bid management, and then practice. And you quickly find that the dollarization is it's pretty simple when you have the mechanics itself. It's simple when you have teams of multifunctional teams working together. Maybe an analytical person with more of a storyteller with a salesperson. They actually get into a flow, and then it's amazing what can come out on the first try. If you're already doing value-based pricing, then I think make sure that you do dollarization the right way, and you systematically dollarize. And it's not done all the time. And so I would encourage you to looking at who's doing that, and is it done in a multifunctional way? Is it done for products or services? And at the end, dollarization for me is a way of life. I've done multiple projects where, as a former consultant, I go in and out, and then they ask me, what do you do next? Well, I recommend that you form a dollarization task force. People that maybe join a meeting every 2 weeks or every month and dollarize something. Innovation, a service, a software, something new.
Okay, dollarization is a way of life. That actually relates to several questions we've gotten on brand, emotional value. So let's start with the existential question, Stephan. Can everything be dollarized?
Oh yeah, totally. We're in an era of big data, and you could, you could use science to dollarize pretty much everything. Whether you have, maybe a reputation score, you have a brand equity score, you have a net promoter score, you have loyalty scores. I mean, you name it, and data can be directly related to value numbers. Then you have, market research surveys you conduct every year, satisfaction surveys, positioning surveys. Those can be also used to conduct basic regression on what can explain maybe a loyalty score, or what can explain a likelihood of purchasing, or an overall value for money score. You could actually deconstruct your R-square and then establish a value based on that. And you get into the value of brands, and there's a lot of calculations possible, including the use of conjoint analysis and putting in your conjoint design some very intangible elements. So don't get me started with this, but I always say everything is dollarizable. If you really want to, and you have access to data and some budget, you could do it. Now, do you show the numbers to everyone? Do you use every dollarized number? That's a different discussion. But in theory, and with data right now, you could dollarize everything.
Great. Let's shift gears a little bit to execution and value selling. What are your top 1 or 2 suggestions to capture value at the B2B customer level?
Well, suggestion is the systematic use of value proposition, and I think you display some great screens there. First of all, understanding your, what value is for your customers, and the pains, the gains, and for specific segments. But they're getting into the habit of using value proposition into the value selling process, and that's one of the tools that I usually recommend. Based on my long experience in companies and working for lots of organizations, I created a value toolbox, and value proposition is a great tool you could use for that. Value messaging, daily value messaging, weekly value messaging at the corporate level with the sales force, so that everybody repeats the same messages over and over and over. The "Did you know" campaign. Did you know every time you buy that product, you can save $10,000 a year? So those are, what you want to do is regain the power in the communication war. Right now, there's so much communication in social media, in traditional B2B media, that you have to get over the noise and do very simple, crystal messages around value. Right, so and that's a difficult thing to do, because there's lots of competition, and the buyers have access to lots of information. So how do you make yourself heard better in a different way with some crisp value messages? And value props, I'll go back to value props, are a great way to engage your customers in value conversations. And I know LeveragePoint, on their resource on the website, have lots of blogs about that, how to engage in value conversation, and moving away from just a pure price discussion. And you may be totally wrong on the numbers, or your customers may say, well, your numbers are wrong, but at least you're engaging in value conversation. Not obviously, at some point you're gonna have to give a price, but it's about rebalancing. 50% value discussion, 50% price discussion, and not 90% price discussion, and maybe some value discussion.
Great. So in an organization where there's a pricing team, what role does and should a marketing team play in value-based pricing?
And that's an excellent question. And this is a question that is a tricky one to answer, because every organization is different, every structure is different, and every definition of the roles is different. So marketing for a company may mean something else than marketing in another company. So is it operational marketing, strategic marketing, communications? Generally speaking, I'm more focused on, are we multifunctional enough in the whole discussion around value-based pricing and value strategies? And I mentioned in my introduction that you need to have a marketing function to be able to do some of these heavy-duty activities around value-based pricing, because it is really a go-to-market strategy. I know it's a big statement, but it's not much more than pricing. when you think about value-based pricing. The true question for me is who can lead value transformation and value project? Who should lead them? And obviously, I would rather have a marketing function lead them than a pricing function, because for the simple reason that as soon as you see, in lots of companies, as soon as you say pricing, there's baggage coming with the pricing, the word pricing, because typically pricing and some other functions are, in a very tense relationship. There is a bit of contextual difficulty there, because you're getting approvals, you're going back and forth in internal negotiation, and that's hard. And it's difficult then, based on that, being focused on transactions, to elevate the debate on strategy. So this is why in lots of transformation that I've coached on is I recommend the creation of dedicated value positions, value managers, value proposition managers, value realization, and separate the function between pricing and value. And I'm actually in the middle of writing a paper on the specialization. Do we need to really have value experts on top of pricing experts? And my answer is yes, because those are two different roles. They all work together with marketing, but value and price are two different, they're connected, but they're two different elements. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, that's very helpful. Here's a question from someone, I think, looking for some practical tricks of the trade from you. What needs to be prepared before you do a dollarization workshop?
Yeah, so preparation is key, like in negotiation. So all these sessions have to be prepared very, very carefully, and the preparation goes into identifying the practical case study you're going to dollarize. So as I mentioned before, you want to have a blend of case studies that are, first of all, they need to be real case studies, like an existing product or a new product or service, or a bid that you got about to give, or etc. So practical is number one. Number two is you got to maximize the chance of success of that session, because at the end, the first impression is key. If the dollarization workshop is too difficult, then people will leave the workshop by saying, it's impossible, I'm not going to be able to do it. So you have to be very smart in the cases you select, and prepare them, not do all the work, but actually start preparing what are the value drivers, what are the differentiators, so that you don't let the group be lost in the exercises. So I typically would, for example, collect all the data available on competition, on what was published internally on marketing. If there is an analysis of value driver or differentiators, I would put it in the folder, so that actually you give them something that's already done, so that you contextualize it for them. And you pick cases that are, promote success. And so easy products, new product with differentiation, services are great because they're usually more differentiated, and stay away from the very complex solutions, or maybe that's something that you do later in the workshop. So preparation is key. Make sure that at the table, at each table, or for each case study, you have a project champion, someone who's actually going to take the work that's being done and continue doing it after the session, and someone who can explain the product and services in question. So a lot of preparation and usually leads to a better experience with dollarization.
Good. We have a lot of questions. I think there's probably just time for one more. So talk to us a little bit more about embedding value in processes, both for new products and for existing products. What are the best ways to get it embedded in an organization?
Well, the best way, as you know, is to look at do a map of your marketing and sales processes, commercial processes, and then make sure that in there you have the value tools that you have created, whether it's dollarized value propositions or value messages or discovery of value data, or if it's not in the process, most likely it's not going to get done. And we're very process-oriented in organizations, and so we have to find a way to embed that in there. One of my experience in the company was to actually use the existing process and include a lot of value component in the existing process. For example, the qualification of new prospects. In the qualification questions, we actually added a few value questions. You know, is that a value customer? What do you know enough about their operations to dollarize? You know, so it's not creating a new set of processes around value, but it's embedding everything you've done in value in the existing process. So, for example, a trade show. If you prepare a trade show, and do you have value messages on the trade show? Do you have brochures with value stories, case studies? Do you have a value statement on the board? Have you trained your people on the booth on value messages? Maybe a couple of dollarization examples. So it's not creating something new, but make sure value is everywhere. That's what it's a discipline, and that's what I promote the chief value officer. The role of a chief value officer is to make sure that value is in every single process that exists, whether it's finance or innovation, improvement, Lean Six Sigma, you name it, because we create value through different avenues for customers in an organization.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephan. Taylor?
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephan and Peyton. And a quick reminder that our next webinar, Quickly Turn Key Customer Insights into Quantified Value Propositions, will be hosted on December 8th with LeveragePoint's Dick Orlando and Brian Hannon. And that is it from us for today, so thank you all for taking the time to join us, and a special thank you to Stephan and Peyton for your insights. From all of us here at LeveragePoint, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and take care.